The engine was off, but Eleanor Davis hadn't noticed. Her hands gripped the steering wheel as if she were still driving. On the screen of her cracked phone, a boy, no older than 16, pulled a little girl from a burning shed, his face turned toward the camera for a brief second. That second was enough. The curve of his mouth, the crease under one eye, the way he looked at danger without fear. Her lungs stopped working. 12 years of silence collapsed into a single moment. She whispered aloud, "Luke?" And for the first time in over a decade, she dared to believe. Eleanor Davis hadn't cried in 11 years, 2 months and 5 days, not since the afternoon her son vanished. A former investigative journalist once known for exposing corruption across the Pacific Northwest, she now lived behind drawn curtains and turned down every phone call that wasn't from her landlord or the pharmacy. Her voice, once sharp and commanding on nightly broadcasts, had gone unused for weeks at a time. She told herself she didn't believe in miracles anymore. But the boy in the video, he had Luke's eyes. And just like that, her carefully built world began to shake. Let us know where you're watching from, and make sure to hit the like button to support stories that matter. Eleanor Davis used to believe that the truth could save people. For nearly 2 decades, she chased stories through rain-slick alleys and corporate boardrooms, shoving microphones in faces that tried to hide and cracking cases other reporters abandoned. She was known for her fearlessness, her ability to cut through lies like a surgeon's scalpel. Davis doesn't blink, her colleagues once said. She'll dig up God's secrets if you let her. And for a time, they were right. But that was before Luke. Before a quiet afternoon in August that stole the air from her lungs and the certainty from her voice. Now Eleanor lived in a small 2-story house tucked behind a forgotten stretch of southeast Portland. Her home bore the weight of a life paused mid-sentence. The windows were always closed, even in summer, the blinds drawn, a mailbox that overflowed weekly. Neighbors had long since stopped trying to connect, retreating politely from a woman who gave nothing and asked for even less. She made just enough money to survive by freelancing for small outlets, articles about public records, zoning disputes, and state legislation no one read. She turned in clean copy, met deadlines, and never asked for meetings. Editors stopped offering promotions or praise. That suited her just fine. There were 3 things she did every day. First, she fed the cat, Dorian, named after the boy in the book with 2 faces. He had shown up on her porch 5 winters ago and never left. Second, she visited the room, Luke's room. It remained untouched. Posters of planets and weather patterns still hung on the walls, curling at the edges. A half-built Lego spaceship rested beside a dusty copy of Holes. His bed was made. His sneakers were still under the chair. Laces knotted the way he left them. She vacuumed once a week, dusted every Friday. She told herself it wasn't grief. It was preservation. And third, she checked the inbox. Not her email, the folder. Over the years, Eleanor had collected more than 3,000 tips, some anonymous, some from well-meaning strangers who thought they saw a boy who looked like Luke in Texas or Ohio or Mexico. She followed up on nearly all of them, spending thousands on travel, hiring private investigators, submitting requests for surveillance footage, dental records, and DNA comparisons. Nothing matched. Every lead ended in a slow collapse. Her ex-husband Mark had tried to move on. He remarried, started a new family. He stopped sending Eleanor updates on anniversaries after the 8th year. She understood. Not everyone could live with a question carved into their chest. But Eleanor had never stopped, because something inside her refused to give up. Not hope, exactly. Hope was dangerous. It whispered too much. It made you believe the impossible. What she carried was more stubborn than that. A belief, quiet, steady, that truth leaves traces. You just had to look long enough, deep enough, hard enough. And when she saw that video, 20 seconds posted on a local news affiliate's website, her world shifted again. The footage was grainy, captured on a cell phone by a bystander. A shed behind a church had caught fire during a youth group gathering. Before first responders arrived, one of the teens ran inside and carried a little girl out through the smoke. His face appeared only briefly, caught in profile as he handed the child to an adult. That would have been the end of it. Except Eleanor paused, rewound, zoomed. And there they were. The eyes. Luke's eyes. She'd spent over a decade memorizing every inch of her son's face. through photographs, through sketches she couldn't bring herself to throw away, through dreams that replayed the day he disappeared with haunting precision. This boy, this Noah, was listed in the caption as a sophomore at Lincoln High School in Boise, Idaho. It made no sense. Luke had vanished from Oregon. Boise was more than 400 miles away. The boy in the video was taller, with darker hair. But that gaze, the way he looked not just at the girl, but at the danger, it was him. For hours, Eleanor couldn't move. She watched the video again and again and again. Then she opened her laptop. There were records to check, forums to search, images to cross-reference. She didn't call anyone, didn't post, she didn't dare. Not yet. Truth had taught her patience, but her fingers trembled as she typed. Her body, long accustomed to stillness, suddenly thrummed with an energy she hadn't felt in years. And under the weight of it all, beneath the logic and the statistics and the years of silence, a voice whispered something small, something almost cruel in its tenderness. What if it's him? 12 years changes everything. The world didn't stop when Luke vanished. The sun rose, neighbors mowed their lawns, politicians lied, people married and divorced and had babies. But for Eleanor Davis, time congealed into a permanent present, thick, slow, and silent. She never left Portland. Not because she couldn't, but because she wouldn't. Somewhere in her mind, she believed that if Luke ever came back, confused, hurt, alone, he might still look for the last place he saw her. The gas station on Route 26, the diner where they had pancakes that morning, the house with the blue mailbox and cracked sidewalk chalk drawings that never quite washed away. She tried therapy. Twice. The first time, she sat in silence for 5 sessions before walking out. The second time, she talked too much and left the office hollow. No one could answer the question she never stopped asking. How does a child vanish into thin air in the middle of the day with no witnesses, no footage, no sound? The police worked hard for a while. Posters were printed. TV anchors asked for tips. A reward was offered. But as weeks became months, the urgency drained away. Leads dried up, interest faded, and Eleanor learned the cruelest truth of all. Missing children become statistics long before they become memories. So she kept the case alive herself. In the years following Luke's disappearance, Eleanor transformed her life into an investigation. She taught herself digital forensics, followed trucker forums, pored over facial recognition software, and created an internal database of every reported missing boy from the Pacific Northwest between 2005 and 2015. She read the FBI's guidelines until she could recite them by heart. But she never joined support groups. She didn't want to be part of a club defined by absence. Instead, she became meticulous. She cataloged every dream she had of Luke in a leather-bound notebook, the way he sounded, the clothes he wore, the places they met. She didn't believe dreams told the future, but sometimes she thought they might be memories trying to find their way home. The rest of her life shrank accordingly. She declined invitations, birthdays, weddings. She forgot how to talk about the weather. The few friends she had drifted away, unsure of how to grieve with someone who refused to accept death. Even her writing changed. Where once she crafted sharp, pointed exposés on corruption and injustice, she now wrote with a colder edge, drier, emotionless. She could no longer afford sentiment. Grief had no space in fact-checking. Still, she paid her bills. She walked to the corner store. She kept the cat fed. Routine, she discovered, was not the enemy. It was the scaffolding that held her together. Some nights, though, when sleep felt like betrayal, she wandered to the edge of the city. She stood by the river and watched the lights ripple. She never thought of jumping. She only wanted to know if stillness could drown noise. But always she returned, because something in her refused to fully let go. That something had no name. Until now. When she saw the boy in the video, the one called Noah, something ancient stirred. Not just memory, not just longing, recognition. A mother's instinct sharpened by years of silence and stillness. And suddenly, the scaffolding wasn't enough. She needed action. She dug up the lockbox in the attic where she kept Luke's dental records, birth certificate, hospital bracelets, and school art projects. She opened the closet and ran her fingers across his last jacket, still faintly smelling of citrus shampoo and rain. She searched for old photos, scanned them into her computer, uploaded them into image-matching software. Then she bought a one-way bus ticket to Boise, not because she was certain, but because she couldn't not go. She told herself she wasn't chasing hope. She was chasing truth. But deep down, she knew they had always been the same thing. The video had only been online for 3 hours when Eleanor found it. She wasn't looking for it, not directly. That morning, she had opened her laptop out of habit more than intent, sipping lukewarm coffee and scanning the local feeds she followed for work. She wasn't expecting to feel anything. But the headline caught her eye. Teen saves child from burning church shed. A quiet hero in Boise. She almost scrolled past it. Local news spun those stories all the time. Fleeting heroes, viral fame, forgotten tomorrow. But something in the headline, or maybe the photo beneath it, made her click. The footage was raw, vertical, unedited, shot by someone holding their phone sideways and shouting in the background. Smoke billowed from behind a small wooden building, flames licking at the roofline. Chaos, sirens, a panicked voice screaming for help. Then from the edge of the frame, a boy ran in. Slim, quick, no helmet, no hesitation. A pause. He vanished inside the smoke. Eleanor leaned forward, barely breathing. Seconds passed. It felt like hours. Then there he was, emerging through the side, coughing, one arm shielding his eyes, the other carrying a small girl clutched tightly to his chest. He passed her off to an adult, then stumbled back, dropping to his knees as a woman rushed in to check him. The camera shook wildly. The video ended. 24 seconds. That's all it took. She watched it again, then again, and again. It wasn't just the face, although that alone was enough to make her hands tremble and her coffee spill unnoticed onto the floor. It was the way he moved, the way he held the child, firm but gentle, the slight inward turn of his left foot as he ran, the way he blinked as if the world came at him just a little too bright. Those were Luke's movements. She knew them better than her own reflection. The article beneath the video was sparse. His name was Noah Jameson, 16 years old, sophomore at Lincoln High School in Boise. A quiet kid, his teachers said. Kind. Didn't like attention. He refused interviews, said he didn't want to be a story. Eleanor read the article 3 times, trying to see through it. Where were his parents? Why weren't they quoted? There was a single line. Noah lives with his guardians, Mark and Valerie Jameson, who declined to comment. Guardians, not parents. Her heart jumped. She opened a new tab. Searched Noah Jameson Boise birth records. Nothing. School records? Private. Social media, a few blurry photos tagged by others, group shots at school events, track team practice. Most were unremarkable, but in one, taken 6 months earlier, he stood near the edge of the frame holding a water bottle, eyes turned slightly away. She zoomed in, and there it was. Behind his left ear, half covered by hair, was a pale crescent scar. Small, faint, almost nothing. But Eleanor knew better. Luke had gotten that scar at age 4 when he fell running along the edge of a sandbox at Powell City Park. She'd held him for an hour in the emergency room. He hadn't cried, just clenched her sleeve the whole time. She had kissed that scar every night. She zoomed in further. Screenshot. Saved. Then she sat back in her chair and tried to stop her heart from ripping through her chest. It's not proof, she told herself. Scars could be coincidence. Faces could resemble. Boys could act alike. It wasn't proof. But it was something, the closest to something she had seen in 12 years. And deep inside her, under the grief and logic and practiced numbness, a door opened. She needed more. Her hands moved fast, but her thoughts moved faster. She found the school's website, looked up staff directories, located the name of a vice principal, copied the number. She wouldn't call, not yet. That would be reckless, but she bookmarked it. Then searched the guardians, Mark and Valerie Jameson, a real estate agent and a contractor. They owned a house in a quiet residential neighborhood 15 minutes from the school. No children of their own listed. No adoption records publicly filed. It didn't add up. She opened a spreadsheet where she kept her previous investigations, one for every child she'd tracked who wasn't Luke. She started a new tab, Noah Jameson, Boise. A folder, a document, a notes file. It was automatic, like muscle memory. By noon, she had found out where they shopped for groceries, the local coffee shop Noah's school team visited after practice, even a bookstore he had been photographed leaving. He was real. He existed, and he lived in the world in ways Luke no longer could. But what if they were the same? That night, Eleanor didn't sleep. She laid in bed fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, the laptop open beside her with Noah's face paused mid-frame. She thought about calling Mark. Not her ex-husband, the man who once made her coffee every morning, the man who painted Luke's nursery blue with stars, the man who cried every night for months, then fewer nights, then not at all. He'd moved on, had twin girls now. He deserved peace. She didn't. She closed the laptop, then opened a new browser window, typed one-way ticket to Boise, Idaho, not because she knew for sure, but because the alternative, not knowing, had already taken everything from her. By morning, Eleanor had packed a small bag, emailed her editor with a vague excuse about a personal lead, and deleted her browsing history. She hadn't traveled in over 5 years. The last time she left Oregon, it had been for a false lead in Sacramento. A boy with a similar scar, similar eyes, and a similar story. She remembered sitting across from him at a gas station cafe, trying not to cry when he smiled and called someone else Mom. The couple had been kind, understanding. They even let her hug him. But the moment she walked out of the door, she had vomited behind a dumpster from the weight of her own humiliation. After that, she told herself she was done. But here she was again, printing out screenshots, organizing notes, triple checking her reservation. This time felt different. Not louder, not more hopeful, just sharper. Like the details weren't guesses, like the story was waiting for her. The Greyhound bus to Boise left at 9:40 a.m. She sat near the back, hood pulled low, earbuds in without music. Her seatmate didn't try to make conversation. Good. As the bus rumbled north along I-84, her mind rewound the footage again and again. She'd memorized the seconds. The way Noah emerged from the smoke, the way his eyes scanned for danger, for safety, for someone to trust. There was something unmistakably familiar in that moment, something pure. And if she was wrong, then she would fade again. Return to Portland, feed the cat, dust the room. But if she was right, she didn't finish the thought. Boise was smaller than she remembered. Cleaner, maybe. The streets downtown were framed by mountains in the distance, and the air had a strange stillness she couldn't quite explain. She took a cab to a modest motel near the edge of town and checked in under a fake name, something she used often when investigating sensitive stories. The room smelled of lemon cleanser and cheap soap. Perfect. She didn't sleep that first night. Instead, she mapped her days. She knew from social media tags that Noah attended Lincoln High, knew he was on the track team, knew they practiced on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays around 4:30 p.m. She confirmed the school's exterior with Google Street View, found a public park nearby, and planned her route. Her goal wasn't contact. Not yet. She just needed proximity. The next day, she arrived an hour early, sat on a bench with sunglasses and a thick library book she didn't read. She scanned every movement through the chain-link fence of the track field. At 4:43 p.m., he appeared. There was no mistaking him in person. He was taller than Luke had been at 12, obviously. Broader. But his posture, the subtle way he glanced behind him before walking toward his group, like someone constantly assessing the edge of the world, that was Luke. She knew it like she knew her own name. She stayed long enough to see him jog a few laps, laugh once with a teammate, and take a swig of water from a battered thermos. She left before practice ended. Her legs were shaking as she walked back to the motel. Over the next 3 days, she observed different angles, different locations, the coffee shop near campus, the used bookstore on 9th Street, the corner market where he bought a soda on Friday afternoon. Never close enough to be noticed, just close enough to be sure. Every evening, she returned to the motel and wrote down details. He holds doors for people. He always looks behind him before leaving a building. He doesn't check his phone often. He reads mystery novels, Agatha Christie. He limps slightly after running. That last one made her breath catch. Luke had broken his ankle when he was 9. The bones had healed, but the slightest uneven terrain caused a subtle hitch in his step. She watched Noah walk up a sloped curb, favoring his left foot. It was him. God, it was really him. But now came the hardest part. Eleanor sat at the motel desk and stared at her reflection in the dark window. What would she say? I'm your mother. Too forward. Do you remember me? What if he didn't? She couldn't ambush him, couldn't traumatize him again. He was 16. Probably told a different story about his origins. Maybe believed it, maybe wanted to believe it. If she confronted him recklessly, he'd run. Or worse, he'd shut down. No. She needed a plan, something honest but soft. something he could walk away from if he wanted to. Saturday afternoon, she returned to the bookstore. She waited until Noah came in alone. He moved quietly, like someone used to being overlooked. He picked up a paperback from the staff picks table and wandered to the back corner, flipping pages with one hand in his jacket pocket. Eleanor approached slowly, carefully. "Agatha Christie?" she asked, voice steady. "Good choice." He glanced up, surprised, then nodded. "Yeah, I like the ones where everyone's lying," she smiled. "That's most of them." A pause. She gestured toward the shelf. "I used to read those with my son, Staff, when he was your age. He didn't say anything, but he didn't walk away. That was a long time ago," she added. "He disappeared when he was 12. His expression changed. Not pity, something else. A flicker of discomfort, or maybe curiosity. "I'm sorry," he said after a second. She nodded. "Me too." Another pause. Then she offered a small smile, gentle. "I don't mean to bother you. I just thought I recognized you from a news clip. The church fire?" He stiffened, just slightly, then shrugged. "Wasn't a big deal. It looked like a big deal to me." His eyes flicked to hers, and for a second, just a second, he looked like Luke again. Not in features, in instinct. The moment passed, he cleared his throat. "I should go. My ride's waiting." "Of course," she said. "Thanks for talking with me." She didn't follow him, didn't ask for his number, didn't mention his name, but as he walked away, she could tell he was thinking about her, and that was all she needed. Tell us your location in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true stories coming your way. It had happened in less than 5 minutes. The kind of moment every parent knows well. A brief stop, a moment of distraction, a glance at a screen, a stranger you don't notice until they're gone. Eleanor remembered the day with terrifying clarity, not just what she saw, but what she didn't see. It was August 14th. Luke had just turned 12. They were driving home from a weekend at her sister's cabin near Mount Hood. The trip had been quiet, peaceful, hiking, board games, campfire marshmallows. Luke loved the outdoors. He was fascinated by insects, clouds, and anything that made noise. He'd spent most of the drive with his forehead pressed to the window, watching pine trees blur into green shadows. They stopped at a gas station just off Route 26, near an unincorporated town called Brightwood. It wasn't even a real stop, just a single pump station beside a small general store. Eleanor wanted coffee. Luke asked if he could buy a comic book. She gave him $5, reminded him to stay close, and walked toward the coffee machine inside. The machine was broken. She spent maybe 2 minutes speaking with the clerk, an old man who apologized in a heavy voice, more interested in a college football game playing on the dusty TV than her complaint. When she walked back outside, Luke was gone. At first, she didn't panic. The bathroom, the candy aisle. Maybe he saw something and wandered behind the building. She called his name. Then again, then louder. She walked around the side of the store, expecting him to pop out, laughing, "Boo," as he sometimes did. But there was only silence, and then the slow, terrible cold that slid through her chest as she realized he wasn't answering. She asked the clerk. He shrugged, mumbled something about a kid walking toward the back a while ago. She ran outside, sprinted around the property, screamed his name, called 911 with trembling hands. It felt like the world was peeling open and she was falling into a dark place where nothing made sense. The police arrived quickly. A few patrol cars at first, then search dogs, forest rangers, even a helicopter. For 48 hours, Brightwood became the center of a statewide search. Flyers went up, local stations aired Luke's photo, tips poured in, most of them dead ends. The only lead that mattered came from a trucker who passed through the area that morning. He remembered a silver pickup truck parked near the back of the store, not at the pump, but off to the side by the tree line. It wasn't unusual, just something he remembered because of how the driver looked at him when their eyes met. Blank. Cold. Surveillance cameras on site were broken. No usable footage. No one had seen Luke get into the vehicle. No plate number. No witnesses. Just a truck. Just a boy. Just air. For the first few weeks, Eleanor slept 2 hours a night, max. She stayed in Brightwood, going door to door, showing Luke's photo, begging strangers to remember something. She combed the woods with volunteers. She started writing down plate numbers of every silver truck she saw, creating spreadsheets, building timelines. Mark, her husband, tried to help, but after the third week, his grief hardened into something brittle. He blamed her for taking her eyes off Luke. She blamed herself, too. But she didn't have the luxury of anger, only focus. She filed paperwork with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, hired 2 private investigators, appeared on local TV multiple times. Each time, her voice cracked less. She stopped crying on air, stopped begging. People don't trust broken mothers, she learned. They pity them, but they don't listen to them. So she became cold, efficient, relentless. But even that had its limits. By year 2, the media stopped returning her emails. Police contact slowed. One of the private investigators sent her a polite email saying, "We've exhausted every viable lead. I'm sorry." By year 4, Mark had filed for divorce. By year 5, she was jobless. By year 6, she stopped speaking to anyone about Luke. Not because she'd given up, but because no one wanted to hear the same story again. Even now, all these years later, she remembered what she was wearing that day. A denim jacket, black jeans, boots that squeaked. Luke had teased her about the boots. She kept them in a box at the top of the closet, not because they were important, but because everything was. Every item from that day was a piece of a puzzle that never came together. Until now. Until Boise. Until a boy named Noah, with Luke's scar and Luke's posture and Luke's eyes, ran into a fire without hesitation and emerged like it was just a thing someone does. Luke would have done that. Luke had done that once. He pulled a stray dog from a rain gutter when he was 7, soaking his new shoes without hesitation. That boy was brave. So was this one. And if she was right, then he hadn't just been stolen. He'd been buried alive inside another name, another life, and it was time to bring him home. Eleanor had learned early on that when official channels failed, you created your own. In the first year after Luke's disappearance, she built a wall in her home office entirely out of printed maps, timelines, license plates, and photos, what the detectives called a chaos board. Hers wasn't chaotic. It was methodical, precise. She cataloged every tip, cross-referenced every sighting, color-coded by credibility. The police tolerated her at first. She was a journalist, after all. She understood procedure. She asked smart questions. But soon her presence became a problem. She pushed too hard, demanded too much. They told her she was hurting her own case. That desperation clouded judgment. So she stopped asking for permission. Instead, she created her own network. Mothers of Missing Children, off-duty officers who believed in her. A retired postal worker from Utah who spent her afternoons scanning Facebook for the faces of lost kids. Even a cyberforensic student in Seattle who helped her run photo comparisons against online yearbooks. But one contact stood out, Henry Luce. He was a retired FBI field analyst who'd seen her speak at a child advocacy seminar in Salem. Afterward, he pulled her aside, offered her his card, and said, "When the system stops looking, you call me." Eleanor never asked him why he cared. Maybe he had a case that haunted him. Maybe he saw something in her eyes. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he kept picking up the phone. 3 days after her encounter with Noah at the bookstore, Eleanor sat in the corner booth of a Boise diner with a burner phone pressed to her ear. "I need you," she said. "Where are you?" Henry asked, already awake, his voice sharp despite the early hour. "Boise. There's a boy. 16, name's Noah Jameson. I think he's Luke." There was a pause on the line, and for a moment Eleanor thought he might sigh, tell her she was reaching again. But instead, "Tell me everything." She did. The video, the scar, the posture, the way he looked at her like somewhere in his bones he knew. Henry listened without interrupting. When she was done, he asked, "Do you have anything concrete?" "Nothing legal yet, just patterns. He lives with guardians. Mark and Valerie Jameson. I can't find adoption papers or foster history. I've looked. It's like he just appeared in the records at age 6. Henry hummed thoughtfully. "That's a red flag. I need to know who he was before that, where he came from. Can you help?" "Send me what you have. I'll start digging." Eleanor exhaled. It felt like the first full breath she'd taken in days. By nightfall, Henry had already found something. He called her back while she was sitting in her motel room, scribbling a rough family tree on a legal pad. "You're going to want to hear this," he said. "I'm listening." Mark and Valerie Jameson filed for guardianship in 2017. It was sealed, but I know a guy at family court. The paperwork says Noah was left in their care by a distant relative. The court granted emergency custody. No adoption, no foster oversight, The relative's name listed is completely unverifiable. Doesn't exist. Eleanor's pulse picked up. So he wasn't legally adopted? No, it was an informal guardianship. And get this, Noah's school records only go back to first grade. Before that, nothing. Which year did he start? Fall 2017. That would make him around 8. Luke was 12 when he disappeared in 2013. A 4-year gap. Exactly the window she'd lost him in. Eleanor stood, pacing. So they hid him, gave him a new name, moved states. Looks like it. But why now? Why save a girl from a fire, knowing he'd be seen? Henry was quiet for a beat. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he didn't care. That night, Eleanor stared at her motel ceiling, Henry's voice replaying in her mind. Maybe he didn't care. Was it possible that somewhere, deep beneath the name and the scar and the stories he'd been told, he remembered? Not facts, not details, but something, a feeling, a pull, a mother's voice he couldn't quite name, but had been searching for all along. The next morning, Henry sent more. A scanned copy of a complaint filed against Mark Jameson in 2014 for suspicious behavior near a rest stop in Northern California. It was dismissed. No charges filed. But the officer had written a comment. Subject became aggressive when questioned about a child in the back seat. Child did not speak, would not make eye contact. The hair on Eleanor's arms stood up. She remembered reading about that case at the time, briefly noted in a forum for missing persons, but it hadn't been connected to Luke. Now she knew why. The name was different, the location too far. But the silence of the child, that felt familiar. She sat down at the small desk in the motel room and opened her laptop. For the first time in years, her hands didn't tremble. She created a folder, titled it Luke Noah Confirmation in Progress. Then she opened a new document and typed the first line. If someone gave your child a new name, would they still be yours? Eleanor returned to the bookstore on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, this time without her notebook or pre-planned questions. She was no longer just investigating a lead. She was meeting a person, a boy, maybe her son, maybe not, but definitely someone worth seeing, even if only to listen. Noah arrived just after 4, the door chime announcing his entrance with a soft, mechanical tone. He moved the same way he always did, carefully, eyes scanning, steps light as if he didn't want to leave footprints. He wasn't wary exactly, but he didn't move like a teenager used to belonging. That was something she remembered. Luke always made himself small in public places, like he didn't want to get in the way of the world. Noah browsed a display of new arrivals, running his fingers along the spines of books. Eleanor waited, giving him space. When he reached the second shelf, she stepped beside him. Back for more mysteries? She asked lightly. He turned, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Yeah, I liked that one you mentioned. You finished it? Last night. A small smile. It was kind of messed up. They usually are, she grinned gently, then paused. I was hoping you'd be here. He tilted his head, curious but cautious. Why? I wanted to thank you for talking to me last time. It probably seemed strange. He shrugged. Not really, just different. There was silence for a beat. Then Eleanor decided to take the smallest step forward. I said something about my son, she began, that he disappeared when he was 12. Noah nodded. I remember. She looked at him carefully. You're about that age now, aren't you? 16. So you were born in, what, 2007? There was the briefest pause. 2006, actually. October. Her breath caught for a moment. Luke was born October 12th, 2006. She kept her voice steady. That's a good month. Yeah, I guess. He gave a non-committal shrug. She nodded toward the scar just visible below his hairline. That's a pretty old one. He touched it reflexively. Yeah, I've had it forever. I don't even remember how it happened. Eleanor smiled gently. Sandbox. You were running too fast. He blinked. What? She didn't flinch. That's how my son got his. At least I think it's the same spot. He looked down, confused now. Not scared, just unsettled. I'm sorry, she said quickly. That was a strange thing to say. Sometimes I notice details. He was quiet for a moment, then spoke softly. I get that a lot. What do you mean? People think I remind them of someone. It happens more than you'd think. At school, at the store. Even my science teacher last year told me I looked like her nephew. He shrugged. I guess I have one of those faces. Or maybe, Eleanor thought, your face is exactly the one someone's been searching for all these years. After that, she pulled back again. Not entirely, but enough. She didn't follow him home, didn't show up at school. She played the long game, kept seeing him at the bookstore. They talked about books, school, what he wanted to study. He liked history, liked old buildings, old cities, Rome, Istanbul, places that had crumbled and been rebuilt. That, she thought, was not a coincidence. Once she asked, "Do you remember much from before living here?" He hesitated. "Not really. Bits and pieces. I think we lived in Utah before? Or Colorado? I don't know. My parents don't talk about it." He caught himself. "I mean, my guardians." Eleanor's ears caught the shift instantly. "Do you call them mom and dad?" He looked down. "Sometimes. I guess it's easier." "That makes sense," she said gently. "Sometimes love starts with what's easiest." Noah looked at her for a long time then, like he was searching her face for something he couldn't name, like part of him wanted to trust her but didn't know how, or worse, didn't know why. That night, Eleanor called Henry again. "He doesn't know," she said. Henry's voice was thoughtful, not consciously, but maybe something deeper. There are these pauses, these expressions, like he's trying to remember something that doesn't exist. "It does exist," Henry said. "It's just been buried." By who? By people who wanted him to forget, and by time. Eleanor stared at the motel ceiling. "I want to tell him." "Not yet," Henry warned. "Not without proof. We're close, but if you push too soon, they could disappear again. Guardians like these don't usually play by the rules." Eleanor clenched her jaw. "Then we'd better find proof. Fast." 2 days later, she returned to the bookstore. Noah was there, sitting in the same corner as before. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Hey," he said, "I saved something for you." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a book, The Westing Game. "Have you read it?" he asked. She stared at the cover. It was Luke's favorite book. He'd read it 3 times by the age of 10. The last time, he'd made her play Guess the Murderer every night before bed. She smiled softly, blinking fast. "Yeah, I have." "Well," Noah said, "this copy's got some notes in it. Marginalia. Weird kid stuff. I thought you'd like it." Eleanor took the book gently, as though it might fall apart in her hands. Inside the front cover, written in faded pencil, were 3 words. "I know things." Noah laughed. Creepy, right? But Eleanor wasn't laughing. She was staring at the handwriting. Because she knew it. She had stacks of it at home, in school reports, on birthday cards, on a crumpled note that once read, "Don't forget my soccer shoes." Luke's handwriting. Still small. Still tilted slightly to the left. Still his. The note changed everything. Not outwardly. Noah didn't notice her reaction. He simply thought the message was weird, maybe written by a bored kid from years ago. But for Eleanor, the moment was seismic. "I know things." It wasn't just the handwriting, it was the phrase. Luke used to whisper it to her whenever he figured out things the adults didn't. When he solved puzzles, beat games, caught her in a fib. "I know things," he'd grin like a little magician unveiling the trick. It wasn't proof, not yet. But it was a voice echoing from a time everyone else had buried. Over the next week, Eleanor allowed herself to be something she hadn't been in years. Present. Not just an investigator, not just a watcher, but a listener, a guide. She and Noah started to talk more regularly. Sometimes at the bookstore, sometimes over coffee at a small cafe 2 blocks from the school. He always chose the corner seat by the window, always kept his backpack zipped tight and close to his feet. Not paranoia, habit. He was, in so many ways, a teenager. But there were cracks in the surface, things he didn't understand about his own history, questions he had learned not to ask. One day, he looked at her with a strange, quiet intensity and said, "Do you think it's possible to forget who you really are?" She didn't answer at first. Then, "Only if someone works very hard to make you forget." He looked down, stirring his coffee. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Noah told her about the Jamesons, but not with anger, with confusion. "They're good people. At least, I think they are. They've taken care of me. I've never gone hungry, never been hit. But they don't talk about the past, ever, not even where I came from. They say they're protecting me, that I was in a bad place before, but I don't remember anything bad." "Do you remember anything?" Eleanor asked carefully. He paused. "Sometimes I dream things. I'm somewhere green. There's a treehouse. I hear someone calling a name, but not Noah. Another name." "What name?" He hesitated. "I can't say it. It's always just out of reach, like a shadow." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Do you hear the voice?" He nodded slowly. It's a woman, warm but scared. She's calling me and I want to answer, but I can't move and then I wake up. Her voice nearly cracked. That's not just a dream, Noah. He looked at her sharply. What is it then? She swallowed the truth. For now. A memory, maybe, or a part of one. One afternoon, she brought an old deck of cards and challenged him to a memory game. He laughed, rolled his eyes, and indulged her. He beat her twice. You remember more than you think, she said with a smile. He grinned. Told you. I know things. She froze. He didn't notice. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Henry worked behind the scenes. Henry had located a local contact, a social worker who once handled emergency custody filings. She confirmed that Noah's case was always strange. No paperwork existed before 2017. No birth certificate could be found. The Jamesons claimed distant kinship but refused DNA tests at the time. The court, overburdened and eager to place children quickly, approved the guardianship with little pushback. But something deeper gnawed at Eleanor. They didn't hide him from the world. They changed the story around him. And Noah believed it. Because children believe the people who feed them. Late one evening, Noah asked her something unexpected. Why are you so interested in me? They were walking down a quiet street after grabbing tea. The sun had dipped behind the trees. Boise's summer dusk painted the world in soft gold. Eleanor paused. No lies. I see someone in you, she said gently. Someone I lost a long time ago. Noah looked at her for a long time. Is that why you keep showing up? She nodded. That, and because I like who you are now, too. He blinked. You barely know me. I know enough. She didn't say I know you like I know my own breath. Didn't say I rocked you to sleep, patched your knees, read you books until you drifted off in my arms. Didn't say you are my son. Instead, she let the silence stretch. And then, in the stillness, he said something she would remember for the rest of her life. Sometimes, I think I remember your voice. This character deserves a like, but sadly, they haven't received one yet. Eleanor felt her heart pounding in her chest as she stood on the porch of the modest Boise home. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the quiet street, the trees swaying gently in the breeze, mocking the storm gathering inside her. She wasn't just here as an investigator anymore. She was a mother. She took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The door opened before the third ring. Mark Jameson stood there, tall, wearing a faded baseball cap, his eyes cold and guarded. Can I help you? His voice was calm, but carried an edge like a quiet warning. Eleanor squared her shoulders. My name is Eleanor Davis. I'm here to talk about Noah. Mark's jaw tightened. We don't have anything to discuss. I believe Noah is my son. His real name is Luke. Mark's face hardened. That's ridiculous. Eleanor stepped forward, steady but resolute. I know what happened to him, and I know you've kept him from me. Mark's expression flickered, a shadow of something. Guilt? Fear? But he masked it instantly. Noah is our son. You don't know what you're talking about. Then explain the guardianship papers that were sealed, the missing birth records, the complaints from other states, the silence. Mark's eyes narrowed. You're stirring up things best left alone. Before Eleanor could respond, the door behind Mark opened wider and Valerie Jameson appeared. Her face was pale but composed. Eleanor, she said quietly, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Eleanor met Valerie's eyes. Why hide the truth? Valerie's lips pressed thin. To protect him. To protect him by erasing his past, by giving him a new name, by keeping him from his mother. Valerie's voice trembled, just barely. You don't understand what happened. He was found in danger and we saved him. That's all. Eleanor's voice was raw. Saved him by stealing his life? Mark stepped forward. You don't know what we went through. I know what I went through, Eleanor said fiercely. 12 years of silence, nightmares, searching in the dark, and you hid him from me. Noah appeared behind them, drawn by the raised voices. He stood frozen, watching the adults like a boy trapped between worlds. Eleanor's eyes softened. She took a step toward him. Noah, she said gently, it's time to talk. He looked at her, torn between fear and hope. Mark's voice broke the silence, cold and final. This conversation is over. But Eleanor wasn't finished. This isn't just about the past. It's about his future, your future, and the truth will come out. Valerie nodded slightly, tears shining in her eyes. We wanted to keep him safe, but maybe we made mistakes. Eleanor saw the cracks in their armor, the pain they hid beneath the lies. She looked at Noah, then back at the Jamesons. We all want what's best for him, but the best comes from truth. The room was thick with unspoken words. Noah stood between two worlds, his past, a life he barely remembered, and a present tangled in secrets and half-truths. Mark's eyes flickered with frustration and something closer to desperation. You don't understand what it was like, the danger he was in before we found him. We saved him. We gave him a chance. Eleanor's voice softened, her own pain barely contained. A chance? By stealing his identity, by locking him in a life that wasn't his, you didn't save him. You stole him. Valerie shook her head, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't meant to hurt anyone. We loved him. We still do. Noah looked down at his hands, trembling. I don't know who I am anymore. Eleanor stepped forward. You are Luke. You always were. The past isn't something to be afraid of. It's part of you. He looked up, eyes glassy. But what if I don't want to be him? What if Noah is all I know? A silence fell, heavy and profound. Mark's voice cracked for the first time. We did what we thought was right. Maybe we were wrong. Valerie nodded, clutching Mark's arm, but we were scared too. Eleanor reached out, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder. You get to choose who you want to be, but you deserve to know the whole story. Noah swallowed hard, the weight of a lifetime pressing down on his young shoulders. Whatever you decide, Eleanor whispered, I'm here. Always. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Noah took a shaky breath and nodded. The first step toward healing had begun. If you found this story meaningful, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support helps us continue to create content that sheds light on hidden truths and human resilience. The sterile room smelled faintly of antiseptic and anxiety. Eleanor sat stiffly, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. Across from her, Noah waited quietly, his expression guarded but fragile. Henry sat beside them, calm and reassuring. We should have the results back within 72 hours, he said, pulling a folder from his briefcase. Until then, it's best to try and stay grounded. Eleanor nodded, though her mind was anything but. Time stretched thin between hope and fear, between the possibility of reunion and the crushing weight of disappointment. The call came on the third day, just after dawn. Eleanor's phone buzzed insistently, cutting through the silence. Eleanor Davis? Yes, she whispered. This is Dr. Collins from the State Forensic Lab. The DNA results are conclusive. She braced herself. The samples from Noah Jameson and your son Luke Davis show a biological match at 99.99% confidence. Eleanor felt a rush of relief and disbelief wash over her. The truth she had chased for over a decade was finally undeniable. That afternoon, Eleanor and Noah sat together in a quiet cafe, the DNA report between them like an invisible bridge. Noah stared at the pages, tracing the words with his finger. So, it's true. Eleanor reached across the table, taking his hand gently. Yes, it's true. You're my son. He looked up, eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and fear. I don't know what to feel. That's okay, she said softly. It's a lot to take in. The news rippled quickly. Friends, family, even strangers who had followed Eleanor's story reached out. But the moment wasn't about the world. It was about two people trying to piece together a shattered past. Noah struggled with the sudden spotlight, retreating into silence at times. Eleanor, too, wrestled with the overwhelming surge of emotions. Joy, grief, guilt, and hope tangled together. Meanwhile, legal steps began to move forward. The Jamesons were placed under investigation. Custody hearings loomed. Eleanor knew the path ahead would be complicated and painful. But for now, she focused on Noah, the boy who had been lost and found, twice. Together, they faced the uncertain dawn. The weeks following the DNA confirmation were a turbulent blur. Noah retreated inward, overwhelmed by the reality that the life he knew was a carefully constructed fiction. His days were spent in therapy sessions, school counselors, and quiet moments alone, trying to reconcile the boy he had been with the man he might become. Eleanor watched with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. She saw the cracks in his armor, the way he flinched at unexpected noises, the nights spent staring at the ceiling. But she also saw strength, a stubborn spark of resilience that had survived years of silence. Friends and family struggled to navigate the new reality. Mark and Valerie Jameson faced legal scrutiny, their protective facade shattered by accusations and the cold light of investigation. Eleanor grappled with her own demons. The years of searching had left scars deeper than any physical wound. Forgiveness was a distant horizon, but hope, the fragile, flickering kind, burned brighter than ever. One afternoon, Eleanor and Noah sat by the river, watching the water ripple under a low sun. Noah threw stones, skipping them across the surface. "Do you think I can be both?" he asked quietly. "Noah and Luke." Eleanor smiled softly. "You don't have to choose. You're both, and you're more than either name." He looked at her, the weight easing just a little. "Thank you, Mom." The word felt new, fragile, but real. Together, they stepped forward, into a future uncertain but full of possibility. The first weeks after Noah moved in with Eleanor were full of awkward silences and cautious steps. The house, once filled with memories of a child lost, now hummed with tentative hope. Yet, the weight of years apart was palpable in every glance, every hesitant touch. Noah struggled with the identity that had been thrust upon him. At school, he grappled with classmates who only knew him as Noah Jameson. At home, Eleanor was patient, never forcing him to be someone he wasn't. She learned to listen more than she spoke, understanding that trust was fragile and had to be earned anew. Together, they began small rituals: Sunday breakfasts, late night talks, shared music, each moment weaving threads in a relationship that had been torn apart by time and secrets. Eleanor found herself learning as much from Noah as he did from her. His fears, his dreams, his quiet strength taught her resilience. He wasn't just the son she'd lost, he was a new person, shaped by both past and present. But the journey wasn't linear. There were days of anger, confusion, and tears. Noah's struggle with identity often spilled into silence, where words failed and memories felt like strangers. Eleanor embraced those moments, knowing healing was messy and uneven. Despite the hardships, each day together was a step forward, a chance to redefine family, to rewrite what it meant to be mother and son beyond the names and the past. The hardest moments came when Noah was alone with his thoughts. In the quiet of his room, away from Eleanor's gentle encouragement, he wrestled with questions that had no easy answers. Who was he really? Noah Jameson, the boy who grew up with the Jamesons, or Luke Davis, the son who vanished 12 years ago? He scoured memories, some faded, some sharp, trying to stitch together a self that felt whole. Dreams of a treehouse, a woman's voice calling him, the feel of denim jackets and sunlit mornings. Pieces of a life that was his, and yet felt distant. One afternoon, staring at an old photo of Eleanor and himself as a toddler, he whispered, "I want to be both. I want to be me." It was the beginning of acceptance, a fragile but powerful step toward owning his story. With Eleanor's unwavering support, Noah began therapy, learning tools to manage the complex emotions tied to his identity and trauma. School counselors helped him navigate social challenges, while Eleanor stood beside him, a steadfast anchor. Together, they planned for the future: college, friendships, perhaps even a new home. Their path forward wasn't defined by the pain of the past, but by the hope of what could be. Noah's journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, he saw a horizon filled not with shadows, but light. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth as Eleanor and Noah drove toward the place where Luke had once called home. The small town, nestled between towering mountains and whispering forests, seemed unchanged by time, yet every corner held a memory. They walked together through the quiet streets, past the old school playground and the diner where Eleanor used to take Luke for pancakes. For Noah, it was all unfamiliar yet strangely comforting, like stepping into a story half remembered. At the blue mailbox by the cracked sidewalk, Eleanor stopped and turned to him. "This was your first home," she said softly. "You may not remember it now, but it's a part of you." Noah reached out, brushing his fingers against the faded paint. "I'm glad we came," he admitted quietly. They continued to the riverbank where Eleanor once stood alone, searching the water for answers. Now, with Noah beside her, the silence felt different, filled with possibility. They sat on a weathered bench, the sunlight filtering through the leaves, casting dappled shadows. Eleanor smiled, reaching into her bag and pulling out a worn photo album. Together they flipped through pages filled with pictures of a boy who had been lost and found, a family torn and slowly mending. Noah looked up, eyes shining with tears. "Thank you for never giving up on me." Eleanor's voice trembled. "I never will. You're my son, no matter what name you go by." As they sat side by side, the past and present entwined, a quiet peace settled between them. In that moment, they both understood. This wasn't an ending, but a beginning, a chance to write new memories, build new bonds, and embrace the future together. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Eleanor and Noah stood at the edge of the river where the gentle current carried leaves and memories downstream. Noah took a smooth stone from the ground, turning it over in his hand. He glanced at Eleanor, a quiet determination shining in his eyes. "Let's skip this one," he said with a small smile. They tossed the stone, watching it bounce across the water's surface, each skip a fleeting moment, a small victory over stillness. Eleanor reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It was the first note Luke had ever written her, a simple message scrawled with childish letters. "I know things." She handed it to Noah. He unfolded it carefully, holding it as if it were a fragile treasure. "I think I'm ready to know more," he said softly. She nodded, the warmth of hope filling the space between them. As the last light faded, Eleanor whispered, "This is your story now. We write it together." Noah looked ahead toward the horizon, uncertain but unafraid, because for the first time he was not alone. The river carried their memories onward, but also their dreams. And in that quiet moment, the future stretched wide open, waiting to be shaped by love, truth, and the courage to begin again. If this story touched you, please subscribe to our channel to support the team behind it. Share this video with friends and loved ones who care about real-life mysteries and powerful emotional journeys. Don't forget to hit the like button and comment below how it made you feel. Would you like to hear part 2?